Well, it's my pleasure to come this morning and represent the missions team and to introduce our speaker this morning. First, I'd like to encourage all of those of you that might be interested in missions that you would come and join us tomorrow night, 7 p.m. at the Ministry Center for our monthly missions prayer time and meeting. So please come and join us after the service. Come and talk to me and I can give you a little info on what it is that we're about. In addition to that, you did get, hopefully, as you came in, a flyer that has 3 of the folks that have come through, 3 of the families that have come through this area this last year that we have talked to and committed to pray for, and in any other way that we can to help with their ministries. As Mark said, you know, we're a small church and we can't always write checks, but we can be in prayer, we can be offering support in other ways. We also have a family in Cork, Ireland that is not on the sheet, the Hovivian family, and they're working there in a ministry of church planting, and we want to remember them as well. And then one of our own, and I'm glad to see Trudy here this morning, Ken DeWitt, is, as we speak, is probably sleeping in Liberia because it's about 12 hours upside down from us. So we want to remember Ken as he is traveling in that part of northwestern Africa, I guess it is, and serving there in encouraging both church planting, education, and health in that region of Africa. So we've got a lot going on, and I was looking around trying to identify those of you that have been with us down to Baja. If you've been with us to Baja, stand up. Shanae, look at this. Mark, stand up. Vince, Kathy, Debbie's in the back. So that's a pretty good representation, I think, of folks that have gone down and served in ministry. And most of you have been to the Door of Faith Orphanage. And you've actually seen the facility, and some of us have stayed overnight there in their dormitories, and we look forward to our next time when we go. There's a lot of information that I'm sure DJ is going to share, but I want to encourage you, after the service, we have some tables set up, and we want you to come by and meet and talk with them, ask questions, and think how you can be an active part in serving in this area of ministry. 100 plus kids that are being served by this team that's down there, and we can be a part of that. It's not that far. It's 3.5 hours maybe to get down there, something like that. Coming home might take you a little longer because of the U.S. border, but other than that, you can go have a good time seeing these kids personally and making a big part of their life. So come over, and there's all kinds of things that you can do. We've got pictures of these kids, and you can take one of these and you can be praying specifically for a child. It's got their birth dates on it. You can send them a birthday card, and you don't even have to put Mexican postage on it. It'll go to Chula Vista, and Door of Faith will come and pick it up and take it down. So it makes it as easy as possible for us to be involved. There's if you wish, you can support a child. There's a form over there that you can do that with. You can fill it out today or take it with you and bring it back to us. There's newsletters from the ministry. So there's just a number of ways that you can become involved with Venture Church as we serve in that part of Baja, California, or Baja, Mexico. I'm not sure which way that is to be named. But DJ, would you come in? And Lynette, are you going to come up too? No? Well, you want to make sure you meet them, parents of 100 children. You look pretty good for all of that. So we look forward to having you share with us the ministry there. Oh, you've got a...
I think I might.
Okay.
And I'm not checking my email. My notes are on here. I want to thank Chuck and his wife for being such gracious hosts, and they and Mark inviting us up to share with you guys and share about what we do. I was kind of impressed. Mark shared with me this morning that he ran a 5K, and that's hard to beat. All of my exercise today was a second trip to the buffet at the hotel. So. I am going to share a little bit about what we do at the orphanage, but that's really not why I'm here. I'm not here to promote Door of Faith. I'm not here to promote what we do. I really want to encourage you as a church and as individuals that I believe God has called us to something bigger, that He has called us to be true servants, and there is tremendous power in that. But before I get into that, I am going to share what we do, just so you have some context of who we are. My wife and I used to live not too far from here. We had a very successful business in Corona, not too far. And a year into our marriage, God called us to Mexico. And we started with 34 kids a year into our marriage, not recommended as a model. And that was almost 25 years ago. Today, we run the largest orphanage in Baja. We run anywhere between 100 to 110 children, from newborn all the way up through young adult. Very few of our children are true, there's my family. Very few of our children are true orphans. It's a lot like bulk foster care, severe abuse, children have been abandoned. They're here for a lot of different reasons, but the difference between foster care or some of those situations is this is done entirely through private donations. We don't get a dime from the government. And most of the children you see in that picture grow up with us. This becomes their home. This is their family. About 75% of our children will never see blood relatives again, and they will not be adopted. And they become our family, and that's a big deal for us. We focus on 3 areas as an orphanage. Give our kids a normal family life. Meals together, birthdays together. We field our own soccer team. Everybody gets a cake on their birthday. My wife spends a lot of time making birthday cakes and giving haircuts. We are like any other family with 100 kids, and that's very important to us. Huge focus on education. All of our children go to public school, but then we have tutors and teachers on site, and we want to give our children a future. So along with a strong spiritual training and background, they get a lot of academics. And today we've got 15 at university level. Last 2 years we've graduated 2 doctors, an attorney. We're praying for him. But we really want to give our kids a future, and that's very important to us. But the biggest thing we give our kids, and that's kind of what I want to lead into today, is we teach our children to serve others. We believe that's Christ's example to us, and it's incredibly healing for us when we reach out and serve others. That is Christ's example to us. Our kids do really well. We have happy kids. For those of you who've been down there, they're kind of amazed. They expect to see kind of depressed kids in a depressing situation, but our kids are really happy. And I explain to them our model is service. That our kids go out and serve others. Our kids run a food bank that serves over 150 families a week. Our kids partner with teams like your church that come down and build houses and other projects. Our kids are actively serving in ministry. And it brings our kids from victim over to people being used by God. And God wants to use us, and it's incredibly healing for the children in our care. And that is a big deal for us. I want to shift gears a little bit, and I want to shift into kind of why I wanted to come today. And what I'm going to say is going to sound a little weird, but there's a topic that we don't think about as Americans very often. Okay? We're going to die. Okay? Nobody likes to think about that. We are going to die. This body that we're attached to will reach room temperature, okay? They're going to put you in a box and go back to a house and say something. What's going to be said? What are you going to do with the time you have left? It might be a couple of days, it might be decades, but this time we've been given is a gift. And we have something to give. We have something to give out to others, and there is power in service to others. What will we do with this time we have on this earth before we're called home? And I want to share about how we got called into doing what we were doing. That's not your standard career path. Businessman, that was my training. I'm not trained in ministry or psychology or childcare. So how does one wind up in Mexico running a large orphanage? And God had it laid out, but if someone had told me 30 years ago I would be running an orphanage in Mexico, I would have told them they were insane. Missionaries are other people. That isn't who I was. They're the weird guy who comes through once a year on Missionary Sunday and shares, and that was the extent of my missions experience. I was active in a very large church, actually Vineyard Anaheim up to 91. I was helping with the high school group, and I loved what I was doing. I was running my business. I was helping with a high school group. I was happy. I was good. Part of our high school ministry was taking our team to Mexico on short-term missions to serve in Mexico. I didn't care that much about Mexico, but I saw the change service was doing to my kids. I saw the power of short-term missions to change lives, not only of the receiving countries, but of the people who would go. And that's what kept me going back to Mexico. Over time, God started to change my heart. Kind of shaped me. Okay, didn't know if anything changed. He kind of shaped me in that direction. God, in spite of my best efforts, was starting to shape me in that direction. And there was a specific day. We were going down, and people sometimes talk about a defining moment. This was the moment I knew my life was shifting. I'd gotten to know this very small, very poor orphanage, and we were helping out there, and they gave me a call. They needed help. They needed something brought down, a water pump, not a big deal. This isn't a lightning bolt kind of thing. I got in my car and drove and dropped off a water pump. I didn't speak the language at the time, but it was different because I was there by myself, and I was just there for a day at the orphanage hanging out. And I saw something going on, and I hadn't thought about this. Every child in an orphanage, every child you see in that picture, has a first day. And if they're old enough to know what's going on, it is a terrifying, horrible, branding experience they will remember the rest of their lives. And I saw a boy being dropped off. He was about 10 years old, and I could see how terrified he was. I didn't speak the language. Even if I did, what could I say? What do you say in that situation? I couldn't tell him his family was going to get their act together. I couldn't tell him he landed in a good orphanage. He didn't. I had absolutely nothing. And I sat with him. And we split a Coke. He cried. And I got in my car and drove home. And it had a profound impact on me. I had that long drive home through the border. And I hurt for him. I hurt for him a lot. But at the same time, I'd never felt so used by God as sitting with that child at that moment when he needed somebody. And I wanted more of that in my life. The short answer of why my wife and I do what we do is we're incredibly selfish individuals. We absolutely love doing what we do. And we love introducing other people to what we do and how service can change people. That is why we do it, and we love doing what we do. It's not for everybody. I don't believe most people are called into international missions. I fully believe very few people are called into orphan care specifically, but we are all called as Christians to serve others. And there is power in that. That brings depth to our lives as we represent Christ well, as we walk in his footsteps of service. Sorry. And I see this pattern where people go on short-term missions trips, and it doesn't affect everybody like this, but it can change their lives. It has an impact on them. Some of you have been to Mexico. There's a gentleman that first came to Door of Faith about 8 years ago from a church in Northern California. He's about my age. He was 50-ish when he came to Mexico. He wasn't expecting a whole lot. He was going to come down to the orphanage and serve for a week. And it gripped him and it changed him. Not everybody who goes on a missions trip is called into missions, like I said, but some people are. Not everybody who walks into a church is going to become a pastor, but some people are. And it gripped him. And a few weeks later, he walked away from what he had in Northern California. His adult kids were gone. He moved to Rosarito, about 30 minutes north of us. And for the last 7-8 years, he's run a ministry in the pallet shack dumps in Baja, in this little canyon, some of the worst areas of Tijuana. You can imagine the living conditions. And he set up a little community center, and he makes a hot breakfast for the kids living in these pallet shacks. And one of the things that if you ever get a chance to meet Dave, this guy glows. He has found his purpose, and he has found joy in doing what he's doing. Missions work can be challenging, can be incredibly difficult at times. It can be very challenging at times. But the people I run into in missions over and over again, one of the things I see in them is a joy about what they're doing, because they have found the joy of serving others. For those of you who were here last year, Brendan and Sarah came up. They run a great medical clinic in our community. Several of you have been to the clinic there. They originally came down to Door of Faith as short-termers. And you never know when God is going to call someone. And I would encourage you to be praying, to be open to what that might be, what God might have for you. Missionaries don't always look like missionaries. People have this vision of what a missionary is, and God can use and will use anybody. Several years ago, we had a church come down, and there was a lady who came to me, and she asked about joining our staff as a long-term volunteer at the orphanage. And on paper, this person didn't look like a missionary. She was once again in her mid-50s, had 2 teenage boys. She was a single mom. She had adopted these boys out of foster care. And the closest thing to full-time ministry or risk she'd ever taken was she was the church secretary of the church that came down. Kind of timid. She was afraid to drive in Mexico. And we met with her and we said, let's do this. And we brought them on board. And it transformed her life. Within 2 years of joining our staff, she had developed her own ministry to some of the gang areas in Ensenada, 20 minutes from the orphanage. And this fairly timid church secretary was suddenly going door to door in Ensenada to preach the gospel. And once again, it transformed her life. And that was a season. Now she is running a large homeless ministry in Portland. She took that chance, she took a step, God called her to something else, but she experienced the joy of service. And that's not my soapbox I keep coming back to. There is power in service to others. As Christians, if we say we're a follower of Christ, I can say this next line because you can't fire me. As Christians, if we're not actively serving on a regular basis somewhere, if it's not flowing out of us, we're hypocrites. If we say we're a follower of Christ, he spent the years he was walking here serving others. Teaching, healing, feeding, encouraging. The last night he had with his apostles, he could have done anything. It was his closing act. He knew that was the last time he was going to have. What was the point he was going to put? What was the period at the end of his 3 years of training with the apostles? Foot washing. Service is important to God. Yes, there are people all around us that are hurting. Yes, there are people all around us that need our help. But I think that's a smaller reason of why it's important to God that we serve. God wants us to serve because it's good for us. It's healing for us. It brings joy to us. And that is an incredible gift that God has for us. He wants us to look for those opportunities every day. It doesn't have to be a trip to Baja. It doesn't have to be a trip to Africa. It can be a trip to the local mini mart. But we need to be open for those moments where we can serve others. Several years ago, my wife and I today, we do orphanage consulting in other parts of the world. And we were on a trip in Malawi. I had to Google it when I was asked to go. It's a postage stamp in the middle of Africa. And we landed in the airport in Malawi. And we had been warned that in the airport there's going to be a bunch of these people running around with these bright orange vests. And they're going to grab your luggage and run it outside and then ask for a tip for loading it onto the taxi. And we were warned heavily about the orange vest people. And we landed in the airport, and it was just chaos. It was people everywhere, and I was looking at the team and trying to get the luggage together, and I turned around, and my wife was gone. It's like not a good start to a trip. I lost my wife, 20 minutes into the country. And didn't know where she was, and a few minutes later, I saw her walking out of the bathroom, arm in arm, with this young girl in a bright orange vest. Okay. When guys go to the bathroom, we're not looking to make a new buddy. But my wife was in the restroom, this other girl was in the restroom, and my wife just said, she treated her like another person, a human being. How are you doing? What's your name? What's going on? I refer to it now as my wife's bathroom ministry, But God gives us those moments on a regular basis if we're open to it, if we're willing to serve others at that level. It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It can be honestly just being there for somebody and listening and being aware. Jesus did his best work by the side of the road. Yes, he taught the masses. Yes, he did great miracles, but it was sitting by the campfire talking with the apostles. It was the woman at the well. It was those small moments. And that's a tremendous example to us that we can go and we can have those moments. God gives us that gift of service. That gift of service we can give to others. And like I said, it's reciprocal. It comes back to us because that is what we are designed to do, to serve others. Today, our job has evolved, and it means a lot. We're still there. We're still helping raise kids. But after this long in this ministry, today my wife and I have become grandparents. We have about 85 grandkids. But we love that we've been able to break the cycle with our kids. It's very common when children wind up in the system, whether it's foster care, in orphanages, anywhere, that they wind up back in the system. And it's exciting for us to see our kids do well, not just well academically. People ask me, well, is there a kid I'm really proud of? And I said, yeah, the ones that are great with their own kids. The ones that are dedicated to their spouses, that are married and doing well. And it's an incredibly gratifying feeling. Today, a lot of my wife and my time is spent planning weddings for kids that we've raised. And 3 or 4 times a year now, Lynette's out helping buy wedding dresses, or I'm walking down the aisle. And the fact that we've been able to break the cycle. But what's done that, and we honestly believe that, is we've broken that cycle through service. Not just us serving the kids, that's a given, but teaching our children how to serve. And it makes them better people. As they become servants themselves, it makes them better employees. It makes them better spouses. It makes us better people as we learn how to serve others. It makes our lives richer. It makes our lives fuller. As I said when I opened, I'm not here to promote what we do. If you want to help, we would love to have you. We'd love to have you come down and see what we do. But that's not why I'm here. I know most of you will probably never travel to Mexico, and that's okay. There's need right here. Where were the donut ladies? The two donut ladies? Back corner. I went over and met them and I said, yay, best ministry in the church. Yay. God might be calling you just to run the best donut table this county has ever seen. That is powerful ministry. Just to welcome people, to give them a smile, give them that sugar high. I want to encourage you, find your ministry, find your area of service. Whether it's right here within this church, whether it's in your community, maybe you're called to Malawi, maybe you're called to Mexico, be open to that. But I just want to encourage you guys to take that chance, to take that step. I guarantee you, you will not regret it. Okay? I think I went way short, but I would love the chance to pray for you before I turn it over to Mark. Do I turn it back over to you? Okay, back over to you. Okay. Is it okay? Okay. Nobody's ever complained about a short sermon. Lord, I thank you for this group. I thank you for this church here. I thank you for the servants' hearts that I know are already here. I ask that you would just expand that. Show them the joy of walking in your footsteps, of walking in your example. We thank you that you have set that example. You've set that example of incredible service to others, that we can take our eyes off ourselves and truly see others with your eyes. Give us your eyes for those around us, your heart for those around us. I ask you would open our eyes to the opportunities of ministry that present us each day, whether it's internationally or just at our schools, at our churches, our jobs, our homes. Help us to have a missions heart right here in this community. I thank you for what you've done for us. I thank you for being the servant and taking that ultimate sacrifice on the cross for us, that you have called us worthy to be part of your family, that you've called us worthy to serve with you and to serve you. We thank you and praise you for who you are and your incredible grace you've poured down on us. And that should be with us now. Be with each one in this congregation. In Jesus' name, amen.